speak Dvarim Hayotzim min halev. Words from the heart enter the heart. So it may make no difference whether I'm speaking in English or Spanish or Yiddish or Hebrew. So Shukreich to the Rabbi and the Jacobson for hosting this evening. As many of you may know, today is the 105th yahrzeit Tafresh Pei, Tafshin Pei Hey, of the 5th Chabad Rebbe, was known as the Rebbe Rashab, who was the father of the 5th Chabad Rebbe. He was the father of the 6th Chabad Rebbe, the Friedrich Rebbe we call him, who in turn was the father-in-law of our Rebbe, 7th Rebbe. And this year is also the 75th anniversary of the Istalkus of the previous Rebbe and the leadership of the Rebbe in Tafshin Yud 1950. So let me share a story or two that I heard from the Rebbe himself. Some of you may know my claim to fame for sitting here in front of such distinguished leaders, especially Rabbi Meislish, is only because for a number of years I had the schus to be a chazer and a maniach of the Rebbe, which means, especially on Shabbos and Yom Tov, the Chagim, when the Rebbe would speak and there were no recordings made and no notes were taken because of Shabbat. So there were a few individuals who would memorize word for word, almost word for word what the Rebbe said. And then the second part of the work was to write it down. So today we have these words published, thank God. So I was part of that team, and especially in the later 70s and the 80s, until 1992, a sad day for all of us, on the 27th of Adar, when the Rebbe unfortunately suffered a stroke, and we were not able to hear the Rebbe speak again until this day, Le'esata, as we say. So what I'm going to share is some things I heard directly firsthand. It's not through third party directly, which I think can be a tremendous lesson to all of us. But with a short introduction, we're coming now to Pesach in just less than 2 weeks. And Pesach, as you may know, the word Pesach also is made up of 2 words. It's called Peh-Soch. It means a speaking mouth. A big part of Pesach is V'gadat Levincha. We speak Magid. We tell our children the story. V'gadat, we tell the children. That's why it's called Haggadah. Why is the Pesach Haggadah called Haggadah? It's to tell the story. Who are we telling the story to? To the next generation, in every generation. So Pesach is an expression, means speh, the mouth that speaks. Pare, who is the enemy of the Jewish people. So the Rebbe's father points out that Pare is Perah, same 4 letters, but Perah means an evil mouth. Because with his mouth, he cursed the Jews, God forbid, and he caused them plenty of pain and suffering. So the tikkun, how do we repair the bad mouth of Pare, is through the good mouth of ours telling the story. So one of the key things to always remember in communication, we all think about how can you communicate better. Even in business, people want to know how to communicate. Definitely in personal life, relationships, husband and wife, parents and children. And in general, if we communicated better, we'd be in a lot better place. Many misunderstandings happen because people don't communicate well. So I remember once the Rebbe speaking about this. He was talking about Pesach, talking about Moshe Rabbeinu. And the Rebbe said that when Hashem, we read in the Torah, Hashem chose Moshe to come and be the Goy of Yisrael to redeem the Jews and take them out of Mitzrayim, of Egypt. So one of Moshe's resistance, the reason he said, I'm not the right person, is because I'm not a communicator. That's what he said. He said, Loi ish dvarim anechi. I'm not a person of words. He said, Adal sfasayim, kvad peh, kvad loshen. Many different expressions where Moshe was saying, Hashem, choose someone that can speak well. Moshe had physically a speech impediment, if you can call it that. And you're saying, you need someone that can communicate well. Moshe also knew that later Hashem would want him to receive the Torah, which is all about communication. Now what did Hashem answer? Hashem said to him these words, Mi som peh la'odam. Who gives a man a mouth to speak? You think I'm looking for a speaker, for an orator, for a darshan, for a preacher? I need someone who's going to be my mouthpiece. I give man a mouth to speak. And you are the person I want you to be my mouthpiece. I don't need a speaker. I don't need someone that speaks well. I need someone that's going to speak the words of God, the words of Hashem. And that's why I'm choosing you. And I remember when the Rebbe said that, it was like you can see it was very personal. And I should add that 6 weeks before the Rebbe had a stroke, the day was Gimel Shvat, that year 1992, Tafshinun Beis. And the Rebbe spoke about this as well. He spoke about a Rebbe that Rebbe has a stroke. He spoke about his father-in-law. So it's a long talk, but I'm not going to review the whole thing, but bottom line, the Rebbe said, why would Hashem choose a person like that? And the Rebbe said, because Moshe Rabbeinu was a man of machshava, with thought. And he was not a person of words. But Hashem wanted this man of thought to bring Hashem's words to the world. And then the Rebbe said that when the Rebbe, who was a Moshe Rabbeinu of a generation, has a stroke, he said those words. In Yiddish he was speaking, of course. It's our job to be the Rebbe's mouthpiece, to communicate what we heard from our teacher, just as Moshe's job was to repeat what he heard from Hashem. And at the time when the Rebbe said this talk, it was very shocking in a way, because why was the Rebbe speaking about a stroke? Well, 6 weeks later, unfortunately, sadly, we understood a bit. And I can tell you for myself personally, if I may, I wouldn't be sitting here now and I wouldn't be doing what I do today were not for those years, especially that talk that the Rebbe delivered, because I felt I'm one of those people, not the only one, there are thousands, but I was definitely involved in this, that heard the Rebbe speak, and our job now is to be that mouthpiece, not to say our own words, but misam pelo adam, to be, like we say right before, every day when you say Shema Nesrei, I don't know if you think about the words, Adnai Svosai Tiftach, who opens your lips? Not your own, it's not your words, you want Hashem to open your mouth, that Hashem should say the right words through you. So when we sit here and have a little Farbrengen, that's what we're looking to do, not to share our own wisdom, but to share the wisdom that we heard. And this brings me back to the story that I wanted to share about the Rebbe Rashab. So, if you're interested, it's a very fascinating document. It was written by a chassid by the name of Rabbi Rivka. He was there in 1920. He worked in the Rebbe Rashab's house. He helped out, and he wrote up a whole document of the last days of the Rebbe Rashab's life in detail. It's very, very emotional and very moving. You know, we have very often a document of an eyewitness of a Rebbe returning his neshama to Hashem. And he quotes there something that the Rebbe said, the Rebbe Rashab said, which the Rebbe would quote very, very often. So we're talking now maybe the last day or two of the Rebbe Rashab in this world. He was not well. It was difficult for him to move. He was coughing, a lot of pain. And he says, the Rebbe Rashab said, I'll say it in Yiddish and then I'll translate. He said, Ich gehe in Himmel. I'm going to heaven. The Ksavim lo zich eich. The writings, the manuscripts, Obviously, the Rebbe was talking about his manuscripts, maybe the manuscripts of all the Rabbeim. I leave to you. And now then he continued and said, so take me in the room where those manuscripts are, Dal Mezayin and Einam will be united. When the Rebbe Rashab said this, in the room was his son, the Frierdiker Rebbe, and some of the other family members. The Frierdiker Rebbe was so, what's the word I could say, was so shocked by these words, because the Rebbe was saying, I'm going to heaven. He couldn't, and he began to sob, and he was crying. And the Rebbe, his father, looked at him and said to him, and said, he's spileless. He said, you're getting a little emotional. A little self-control. I'm loosely translating it. And Rabbi Rivka writes that from that moment on, the Frierdiker Rebbe did not show any emotion. His father told him to control himself, and that's what he did until the last moments. So what does this mean? I'm going to heaven, and the writings I leave to you. So this is unbelievable if you think about it. It really answers the secret to, everyone asks the question, what's the secret to Am Yisrael Chai? We're here now, a nation, Am Yisrael, almost 4,000 years since Avram Avinu, in an unbroken chain. Everyone sitting here is a ben, a son, or a daughter. We're going all the way back to Avram, Yitzchak, Yaakov, Sarah, Rivka, Rachel. No other nation made it. Who were the children of the Egyptians, of Pari? We don't even know who they are. What about of the Babylonians, of the Romans, of the Persians, of the Syrians, of the Ottoman? I can go through the whole list. So in this story, the Rebbe explains, captures the whole essence. I remember I was asked by a journalist, it was last year, it was Gimel Tammuz. Gimel Tammuz last year was 30 years. From Gimel, that's what we call it, Gimel Tammuz, a mysterious day, but they call it that. So the journalist from New York, he's a New York journalist, a big guy, he's a Jewish writer, but he's a big skeptic. He's always asking questions, So he said to me, with all my questions, I have to ask you this. It's a question everybody asks. How is it possible that Chabad continues to grow and thrive all over the world? It's 30 years that their CEO, that's how he called it, the head of the Chabad company, is not here physically. So, is there a company in the world that can function without a chief executive officer, a leader? Even with CEOs, many companies can't function. So how is it functioning? And not just functioning, nobody has left their job. If you know the numbers, since 30 years ago, 31 years ago, it's thousands of new shluchim and shluchat went out all over the world. And this is known, this is not a rumor or hearsay, it's documented. So how is it possible? So I answered him, I said, keep in mind, Chabad is not a company, and the Rebbe is not a CEO. It's not a business. This is a godly movement. It's a Torah movement. And just as the Torah is nitzchi, is eternal, so everyone that represents Torah is eternal. The Rebbe is not just an individual, a human being who is charismatic and has blue eyes and was smart and was brilliant and even a Torah scholar. All that's true, but that's not his. I didn't tell him everything I said now about Moshe Rabbeinu. I said, you have to remember, this is a man that's not speaking his own words. He's speaking Hashem's words. And that never dies. And I have to tell you, visibly, even though this person is a big skeptic and he wouldn't call himself a Maimon, a believer, but he began to, I could see it was tears in his eyes. And this is captured when the Rebbe Rashab said, Irgei Nimul, and I leave you the writings. He wasn't trying to make anything, he wasn't trying to share sad news. He says, you want me, even as I am in heaven, you have to go to my writings, my teachings. Because there's a beautiful concept that when Hashem gave the Torah to the Jewish people, So what's the first word of the Ten Commandments? I'm sure everybody knows. You know the first word? Anochi, Anochi. Anochi Hashem Elokecha. So the Gemara says in Shabbos that Anochi is an acronym, a Rosh Tevis, Ano, Nafshi, Ksovis, Yehovis. In Aramaic it means I, God, Hashem. I have inscribed my nefesh, my soul. Hashem is inscribing his soul in these words. I'm not just giving you a Torah, I'm giving you a piece of me. However you explain it. The Torah is not just a book of laws. It's not just a book of inspiration. It's God's words. And just as God is one, his words are one with him. And the Rebbe in that talk and many other talks said a tzaddik represents Hashem. A tzaddik is not a great man on his own. That's the mistake people make. It's not because he's a great man, it's because he's a man of God. Since God is great, so anyone who's dedicated to Hashem is bringing God's greatness to the world. That a tzaddik too, in his writings, in his ksavim, in the words of the Rebbe Rashab, it puts his whole nefesh in there. So a tzaddik, even though a tzaddik lives in a physical body, but as the Baal HaTanya, the Alter Rebbe writes, Rabbi Shneur Zalman, he says a tzaddik's life, not after 120 years, in this physical world, is not physical life, it's spiritual life. It's Avos Hashem, Yira, Amunah. So we want to have a tzaddik. How do you connect to a tzaddik? I remember when I was in yeshiva in 770, as a young bocher, young student. I'm a little older than Rabbi Meisler, right? Not this long. But we went to the same school, same postgraduate school called 770s department. So I remember we were sitting in the yeshiva upstairs learning. And after mincha, after davening the afternoon service, the Rebbe went to his room. But sometimes there would be someone that he would come or bring something to the Rebbe. So what was called the room, called Gan Eden Atach, the room right outside the Rebbe's room. So there was some guy from, I learned later, from Toronto. And he was standing there and he brought the Rebbe, looked like a book of a manuscript. Like I'm saying, the writings. Later we learned it was writings of the Rebbe's father-in-law, original manuscript that he found somewhere. And he brought it to the Rebbe. The Rebbe said to him these words. The Rebbe said to him, since you brought to me something so precious, and the Rebbe actually referred to these manuscripts as living entities. The Rebbe didn't see a book as a book. A book is, especially written by a Rebbe, by a tzaddik, is living. It has his soul in it. And the Rebbe said, since you brought something so precious to me, I'd like to give you in return a gift, something precious to you. What would you like to have? So he was Canadian, American, I'm not sure, but he was like a young man from this modern world. So he said to the Rebbe, Rebbe wants to give me something, I'd like to have a picture of the Rebbe with his autograph. You know, Lahavdil, Elef Havdolas. You know, people have sports heroes or Hollywood stars, so they have a picture with a signature, like on a baseball or football or something. I mean, so that's what he thought. He said he'd get from the Rebbe a picture with his signature. And the Rebbe smiled and said to him, why do you want a picture of me? He says, because I want to be connected with you. The Rebbe said, you want to be connected with me? Read what I read and learn what I learn and daven what I daven and do what I do, then you'll be connected with me. You go across the street, there's a bookstore there, and there you can find all my teachings and writings. And whatever you want, you can get for free, and that's how you connect with me. So there are many ways to connect to people. And the deepest connection is when you connect to what they stand for. So I didn't share all this with the journalists, but I share with you. So the ultimate connection in Yiddishkeit, and why we're here today, because we were not connected to people. We're connected to God, to Hashem. But Hashem shines through his leaders. When you have a leader like a Moshe Rabbeinu in his time, and then a Moshe in every generation, you're connecting to something that's greater than just human. You're connecting to Torah, and you're connecting to eternity. And that is something that never goes away. That's what I told him. I said to him, so therefore, yes, we would all love to be with the Rebbe physically, but Hashem has His mysterious plans. But don't ever think that Chabad is dependent just on the physical. We live on, and its success succeeds and continues to grow because the teachings continue to grow, and the teachings live on. They're chai, we say eitz chayim, it's alive, and that is nitzchi. That's Am Yisrael chai. So we're sitting here on Beis Nisan, the 12th, the 2nd of Nisan, the month of Geula. We're preparing for Pesach. So the most important thing to know for each of us is that we are all part of a eternal nation. Look at just the last year since what the world calls October 7th, what we call Shmini Atzeres, Simchas Torah. There's been, with all the challenges, I'm not in any way minimizing the losses and the pain and the hostages, but on the other hand, you saw an unbelievable surge of Jewish pride, Ge'en Yaakov, an unbelievable surge of Avos Yisrael and Ahdus Yisrael. We can do a lot more. We're not perfect, but something happened. I see it all the time. I hear from many of my friends and colleagues that people coming like never before to shul, a mezuzah, tefillin, lighting a candle. Because there's something that touches the essence of a Jew, when sometimes in time of crisis, should only be in good times. But we have to be proud of who we are and know that the ultimate connection that connects us is not just because we're family, it's because we're connected to one Hashem. And Hashem has blessed us with tzaddikim, and blessed us with Rebbe, and blessed us in every generation with Hamesha that don't speak their own words. That's the key. We're not speaking our own seichel. We're channels to communicate the words of Hashem. I remember it was 2 days after Gimel Tammuz, 1994, and I was interviewed. I was on a big show with Larry King. Remember him? CNN. And he had me on with two others, and he asked me this question. He said to me, this was live, so there's no time to prepare, and I didn't know what he was going to ask. He said to me, I understand that Hasidim Chabad are shocked, are saddened by the passing of the Rebbe. But why are you shocked? Everybody dies. Every mortal human being from the beginning of time passes away. Why are you so shocked? So I said, we have to remember, for us, the Rebbe represents Torah. And the Torah is immortal. Immortality that has been passed on from Har Sinai, and it went through every challenge, even through the Holocaust. And it never was affected by anything. So when you see immortality touched by mortality, it's more than just painful or sad, it's shocking. Because there's things that are representative of eternity. Everything in this world, yes, is subject to change, but not what we call dvarim nitzchim, not eternal things. So it's our job, our mission for ourselves, for our children, for our families, for our communities. Pesach is coming. Why do we sit around the Seder? We're just remembering what happened 3,337 years ago. It's exactly that amount of time. No, it's because we're reliving it, and we want to teach our children that some things are forever, and the Am Yisrael is forever, and Hashem is forever, and the Torah is forever, and we pass it on with love and with simcha and with passion. Unfortunately, there are many Jews today that may not be at a Seder, so we're responsible to try to bring as many we can, but not just to bring at a Seder, but to live it like it's happening right now, fresh, new, exciting, passionate. I get many questions from parents who say to me, my children say, I can't come to the Seder this year because there's a baseball game, or my friends are going to a party. They say, what are we supposed to do? What are we supposed to do? So I said, you have to make the Seder more exciting than a baseball game. That's what you have to do. You can't just tell them come out of guilt or come out of obligation. Fine, if that works, great. But not everybody's going to always listen because your grandfather and grandmother are going to be disappointed. That's nice. You have to make them, it has to be living. It has to live inside of you. That's the key to make anything perpetuate. It has to be alive. And alive means it has to be exciting, it has to be personal, it has to be passion. And that's why we have a Torah, and that's why we have a Primus HaTorah. The Rebbe Rashab, the Baal Ha'ilul of today, what he taught was the Neshama of Torah. You know, what's a body without a soul? I don't want to even say. It's not alive. It's called a corpse. It's lifeless. The Shalah HaKodesh writes that davening without kavanah, without intention, a mitzvah that you do just mechanically, by habit, without passion, is like a goof without a neshama. And that's our obligation. We have to bring neshama into it. Not enough just to do it. It's better to do it than not to do it, for sure. But a seder has to come alive. And we have now almost 2 weeks. You prepare for it. You think about it. Talk to your children about it. How can we make the seder come alive? It has to be relevant. It says, "B'chol dor v'dor chayev adam liris es atzmei kilu yatzim mitzrayim." Every generation, and the Alter Rebbe adds in Tanya, every day, we have to envision ourselves as we're going out of Mitzrayim. But tell me, most of us were never in Mitzrayim, in Egypt. Anybody here traveled to Egypt? Maybe there's 1 or 2 people, not too many. So what does it mean? We have to envision that we were in Mitzrayim. You could say we have to remember that there were Jews in Mitzrayim. Why do we have to imagine? So Chassidus explains, including the Rabbi Rashab, Chassidus explains, because Mitzrayim is more than just a land called Egypt. Mitzrayim in Hebrew comes from the word Mitzarim v'Gvulim, which means constraints, limitations, boundaries. So fill in the blanks. Mitzrayim is everything in your life that you want to free yourself from. It could be addictions, it could be fears, it could be inhibitions, it could be insecurities. Anything you want to free yourself from. Everybody has a Mitzrayim in their life. It's something, a bad habit, bad behavior, a mistake you made. So before you sit down at the Seder, the first thing you should say is let everybody think in their minds. You don't have to announce your Mitzrayim necessarily to everyone. And say, how am I going to tonight at the Seder, how am I going to free myself from Mitzrayim? And then we're given 15 steps of the Haggadah. And every step of the way is not just another mechanical thing, it's actually a journey toward Cheres, Ma'avdus l'Cheres, from your Mitzrayim to some type of freedom. That's how you make the Seder personal. I'll share some words about it as we go. I don't know what kind of time limits, what the curfew here is in Mexico City. But my point is just to use it as an example of making something come alive. I can assure you, and I'm sure everybody agrees, if you can make the Seder exciting and personal, that the Seder offers you answers to the dilemmas and the struggles that you personally have, people will want to run to come to the Seder. Not just be there to be Yetzer, to just satisfy someone else, but because you see in it lies the secret to freedom. And we all want to be free. And remember, freedom is not just that you're not in a prison. You can be free. I just met a fellow a while ago. I can't say his name for confidential reasons. He's the son of a major billionaire in the world today, who everybody knows. And he tells me, it's a long story, but briefly he tells me, I have all the money in the world. I can do whatever I want. I can go anywhere I like. I have everything. But I live in what he called a gilded cage. Like think of a golden cage. It's a big cage, but it's still a cage. So I said, why? He said, because I didn't earn anything. I'm not happy. I don't have a family. I have no, I'm a spoiled rat, basically. I mean, he wasn't that stupid guy. So he says, I have everything. It's a golden cage, but it's a cage. So I told him, when I met him, it was a while ago, and I said to him, when Pesach comes, why don't you go to the Seder and find a way to get out of your cage? We spoke about it at length. I could share with you the details. Today he's a married man and he has children, so thank God things worked out. But it took a lot of work, because a person who has everything can be the biggest cage of all, because you think you're already there, you think you're comfortable. Comfort zones are the biggest slavery. So slavery doesn't always mean that you have someone with a whip that's oppressing you. Slavery can be psychological. and emotional and spiritual. So Pesach is all of that. It opens us up, and that's part of how Pesach lives on, as well as I said before about the Torah in general. So we're here together. They say the difference between a Farbrengen and a speech and a party is this: in a speech, one person speaks and no one listens. In a party, everybody's speaking and no one's listening. And a Farbrengen, the true Farbrengen, no one is speaking but everyone's listening. So even though I am doing the speaking here, but I'm trying to not speak my own words, as I said before, speak words that I heard from people greater than myself. And hopefully we could all bring together and speak to each other without even using words, and with a niggin or two as well, and recognize the great miracle that each of us has the schus to be here right now in this world. And we are shluchim, we're all messengers and ambassadors of Hashem, to make a kiddush Hashem and to show the world, even the world that some people still hate us and express that hatred, but not only are we not affected by that, but to demonstrate that we are a beautiful nation that has brought the most important values to the world, that the world cherishes, including the value of freedom. Who brought freedom to the world? It's Am Yisrael. That's what Geulas Mitzrayim is. All other freedoms all originate from that freedom. And we demonstrate that through being proud Yidden and proud Jews, both here in Eretz Yisrael, and Hashem should protect all our brothers and sisters everywhere, especially in the Holy Land, especially those standing on the front lines that are sacrificing their lives for protecting men, women, and children. And Hashem should indeed release, just like we were released from Mitzrayim, the hostages, finally, and we should have a total nitzachon. So even before Pesach comes, we already have this nitzachon, and maybe the most important nitzachon of the Gula Amitit V'Ashlema. So, b'meila, when we go already into Pesach, we already have L'Shana Haba B'Yerushalayim. L'chaim, l'chaim. Yeah, sure. What's our favorite digging in the